Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Michelle here from happyhealthyher.com. And this week's Compassionate Chat is a bit of a 2-for-1 special. We're going to expand on what we talked about earlier in the week in part 1 of why you can't spot the narcissist. Now we're diving into part 2 where we discuss how you might be a narcissist magnet like me and the ultimate remedy for that. So unfortunately, we can attract narcissistic people for many reasons. The biggest, in my opinion, is an energetic attraction. So I talk a lot in my work about everything being energy because I have found that very much to be true. And I have, as someone who has a master's degree in integrative health and healing, that's a main core of what integrative health really focuses on, is that the energetic connections between people and how that contributes to our health. So when you're dealing with a narcissistic person, you're dealing with one end of an energy spectrum. A narcissist has a negative taking energy. At the other end of the spectrum is someone with a lot of empathy. Sometimes we might label them as an empath or a sensitive person, but regardless, it's someone with a lot of empathy. So narcissistic has the negative taking energy. The empathetic person has a positive giving energy. And you can see a negative with a positive is going to attract like a magnet. So it's literally as simple as that. But of course, there's a lot more complexities to how that energy shows up. So we're going to dive into that. So to begin, narcissists really are the ultimate energy vampires. So this is why if you're around a narcissistic person a lot, you will often end up exhausted or depleted. And of course, when you're in that state, it makes it really hard to see them clearly and protect yourself. I want to share just a bit about my story as a narcissist magnet because I have a feeling that a lot of others will relate to some of what I have to share. I do believe that the traits that I actually like the best about myself are the ones that have been hijacked by the narcissistic people in my life. So to begin, I live by the golden rule. I have a really strong code of ethics around not hurting other people. Essentially, I'm really truly focused on doing the right thing, oftentimes at all costs, and taking the high road, even if it means I'm being taken advantage of. So I have a strong belief in karma. I have a strong spiritual connection. I don't like to hurt other people, and that can often lead me into scenarios where people who don't think the same are taking advantage of me. So to that same end, I actually have a pattern of codependency and people-pleasing, which has meant that my boundaries around my own needs have been quite weak. When I was very young, I was called selfish and spoiled by a few different adults that really made me not want to be those things. And so I went out of my way not to be selfish and spoiled, and sometimes over pushed myself in a selfless way. Not that I'm perfect, but I do have this focus on not being selfish to a point of oftentimes disregarding my own needs. I'm also an introvert. I was most definitely a shy kid and an introvert in a world of extroverts. And many times I just felt like I was trying to fit in, which made me very externally focused. Like my energy was always directed outward, with an emphasis on being agreeable and being likable and literally just fitting in. I rarely stopped to consider my own feelings or even if I actually liked a lot of the people in the situations that I was encountering. This, of course, meant that my bar was super low in terms of what I expected from relationships of all types. And then, as an overachiever, I really was an overachiever since I was very young. I was very aware, even at as young as 5, that people didn't like me when I was successful. but I was very driven to be successful and do well in school and all the other things. So in order to make other people comfortable, I would often self-deprecate or put myself down or dim myself or not, try to achieve, but not actually, trying to not make anyone feel bad about my achievements. So what that actually did was it attracted people who were bullies and actually thrived on eroding my self-esteem. And then finally, which I think is something that I think is really common with people who are spiritual or empathetic, is that I disregarded my intuition. So when I actually saw red flags in other people pretty clearly that told me that the person was not respecting me, or that they were self-absorbed or insensitive or even energetically draining me, I would just keep giving them pass after pass. And I would assume that the person didn't know any better. I used to say that all the time. They don't know any better. Well, side note, I finally realized that any and all adults do know better. We have all been raised, luckily, with ethics and morality. You really can't grow up in society without having been taught ethics and morality, knowing right from wrong. So people who are willfully manipulating other people are doing it with an awareness, and we have to honor that. So it also helps to understand what a narcissist is ultimately after. And what a lot of experts refer to is they want supply. They ultimately want to have their egos, their very fragile egos, fueled and supported by the people around them. So supply can look like many, many things. Doing things for them, having the ability that they have power and control over another person, that the other person validates them and compliments them, that the other person appreciates them, that they're getting unconditional support and love, that they're getting affection, that they have money or other resources, and that they have sex. And what it all really boils down to is they want energy from other people. They want to take others' energy. Like I said, using the term energy vampire is actually a lot more accurate than even trying to label narcissism or psychopathy or sociopathy or any of the labels. It's actually easy to just say energy vampire, because these are people who are siphoning your energy. It's important too to note that anyone who has been through previous narcissistic abuse or trauma end up being more of a magnet for this type of energy, because the energy feels normal. Chaotic, negative energy feels normal to our energy fields if we've been in it for a really long time. So I mentioned in the part 1 video that if you live with someone, it's very hard for you to see that you're being abused or manipulated, because it's like you're so overwhelmed with that negative energy. And part of healing from narcissistic abuse is reprogramming what feels normal to us in our energy field. So I talk about this a lot in my course, Free from Narcissists, a 10-step program to reclaim your joy. The focus in that program is heavily on energy, and specifically on raising your vibration through joy, through love, and through activities that will put you into a positive space, so that you basically become so positive that you're kind of repelling all the negative energy around you. So there are specific traits of a narcissist magnet, and I want to go over 10 and try to keep it to 10. Some of these are fairly broad topics. Number 1, you are sensitive or empathetic. So we already kind of covered this, but sensitive and empathetic people are basically like a beacon of light. Your energy is pushing out, trying to be helpful, trying to be of service, and the energy vampires of the world are like seeking you out. The second piece is oftentimes people who are introspective or self-aware are going to attract people who are the opposite. So a narcissistic person lacks self-awareness. They are not stopping to look at how their behavior affects other people. So just imagine if you are someone who is constantly looking at your behavior and constantly trying to reflect on whether or not you're being perceived well in a social situation or if you're doing the right thing, you're going to be owning all the responsibility in a relationship. And a narcissistic person is more than happy to give you all that responsibility. So again, that attracts them to you. The third thing is typically rescuer, fixer types will attract narcissistic people because of the very core nature of what that means. It means we're trying to help. We're trying to see the good in other people. We have to step back and recognize, like I mentioned with the adults, that all adults are responsible for their own behavior, and none of us should really be assuming the role of rescuer or fixer because it's just going to lead us to be harmed. The fourth piece is you're just especially agreeable. You just want to get along. You're quick to apologize and take responsibility for everything because ultimately what you're looking for in your relationships is safety and peace. This is definitely something I have recognized in myself, is that I just want to be at peace. I want to feel safe in my world. And so I don't want conflict. I don't want to fight. And so if you're like that, you're very likely to attract people who are quite manipulative because they know that you're going to be easy to manipulate, basically. The fifth trait is being considerate and conscientious. So really, you're thinking about others' feelings. And that right there means that you're on a different plane than the narcissist who is not thinking about other people's feelings, but they really want someone who is thinking about their feelings. The sixth thing is that you're compassionate and quick to forgive. So you may be very spiritually minded. It may just be that you just really want, again, you want everybody to get along, and you have a perception that everyone is doing the best they can. And so you're just going to give people pass after pass. Your heart is not like the narcissist's heart. Your heart is a generous, giving, compassionate heart, and theirs is sadly a darker, more taking-oriented heart. And those two are magnetic toward each other. The seventh piece is you're naturally validating or supportive of other people. So you love to give compliments. You love to be of service. You love to support other people. It's great to make people feel good. And if you're an empath, this is a very, very natural inclination. So in my perspective, an empath is someone who feels other people's energies and emotions. So naturally, if you are like that and you're around people you can feel that they have some negative emotion, you're going to pour as much love and validation and support toward that person as you can to try to shift their energy to one of more positive or neutral. Because honestly, then you're going to be able to feel better. You're going to be able to feel safer if that person you're with feels good. So the intention is, sometimes people say that people who are empaths or even codependent are very manipulative, and that can be true, but the intention is actually a really pure one. You're trying so hard to get other people to feel good, to feel loved, to feel supported, and that ends up being manipulated. The eighth piece is a bit broad, and that is that there are a variety of personality types that predispose us to being manipulated. And so if you follow Myers-Briggs, which I do and happen to love, there are 16 Myers-Briggs types, and 4 of them fall under the category of the diplomats. Now, the diplomats are basically giver types, and it's just like what it sounds. They want everybody to get along. They're diplomatic. And these types are the INFJ, which I am, the INFP, the ENFJ, and the ENFP. And then finally, if you follow Enneagram, the Enneagram studies, number 2 in the Enneagram is the helper type. So of course, anyone who's a helper type is going to be predisposed to helping someone, and then they're going to be also predisposed to being manipulated by someone who is not a helper type. So the 9th category is kind of, I've alluded to this already, but someone who is codependent or a people pleaser. That type of pattern, which often comes from our childhood, it comes from how we learn how to get along in the world. We're frequently willing to put up with crappy behavior. Many times I know for myself, I didn't think I was allowed to not put up with the crappy behavior. It took me a very, very long time to even figure out what codependency was. I didn't figure it out until I was right around my 40th birthday, and my mind was really blown because I thought everybody lived that way. I thought everybody felt the need to put other people's needs before them. And I had to have a real reality check that no, a good portion of the population does not feel that way. And in fact, there's a good portion of the population that is actively manipulating and doing the opposite of people pleasing. So if that's you, it's going to be a problem. It's going to mean you're predisposed again. So the 10th and the final category is, in my opinion, astrology signs. And so as someone who loves astrology and really started studying it in depth 8 years ago, I have found that my natal chart is pretty much like a cookbook for what a narcissist magnet could be. I have a lot of Cancer energy, which is very emotional. And I feel like that has actually truly predisposed me to be more prone to the narcissistic abuse in my life. So in general, though, the water signs, which are very emotional. So if you have a lot of water in your natal chart, in your birth chart, you can potentially be at risk. Specifically, Cancer energy, which is the mothering energy. It's the type of person who does want to mother and assist other people. And Pisces, which is a very spiritual energy. It's the mystic. They also want to be of service, and they tend to forgive people really quickly. Scorpio is the other water sign, and I think Scorpio, in fact, I know Scorpios who have been through narcissistic abuse, but they're not quite as likely because Scorpio is represented by the scorpion, and they're kind of badass, and so they don't typically get manipulated in the way that someone like a Cancer or a Pisces might. But because they have all that water, they definitely can fall into that trap. And then the other sign I see this with is Libra. Now, Libra energy is so peaceful. It's all about balance, and Libra rules relationships. And so people with a lot of Libra energy often just want everybody to get along. So of course, if that's your sole motivation, you can potentially be manipulated by people who don't care about other people getting along and just want their own needs to be met. I really want to stress that it is super important to remember that narcissistic people and manipulators do not go after losers. I think people say all the time that they go after anyone, and that is not necessarily true. If you think about what a narcissistic person is really after, they're after an ego boost. They're after someone who will make them look and feel good. They go after the shiny objects. So frequently, if you have been targeted by narcissistic people, you probably got it going on. And I think that's important to say because frequently what happens is our self-esteem, our confidence gets completely depleted by being in relationships with these types. And you have to know that you are so worthy. You are so filled with light and possibility. And that's what they're going after. I think when I finally realized this, my whole worldview shifted. I used to think, oh my gosh, I felt like so naive and like such a loser because I kept attracting these types. And then I had to finally say, no, it's not the worst parts of me that are attracting this. It's actually my best parts that are attracting these types of people. So the traits that a narcissist tends to seek in relationships, and this can be a work environment, a manager might be seeking you, a romantic partner might be seeking you, and even just friends could be seeking you. There's quite a few, and we'll start with just, they tend to go after someone who's younger. And this speaks really to they're trying to utilize your naivete. So I met my most narcissistic person, my narcissistic romantic partner, when I was 24, and they were 11 years older. So you can imagine, I am now 49 and I look back on 24-year-old me and I think, oh my gosh, what were you thinking? I was a totally different person then. And so they will actually work with your naivete, your younger nature. And that's how they can get into your head, is if you are a lot younger and you haven't developed boundaries and skills around detecting these kinds of people. They also go for people who tend to be popular. Like I said, they want someone who's bright and shiny, so they look for people who maybe have a strong friend group or seem like they're very outgoing or seem like they can really be social. They also go for people who are physically attractive. Now, looks are highly, highly subjective, but in general, it's someone's thin or fit or well-dressed or just has a good sense of style or is even unique. They're going to look for someone who's a little bit different from the mainstream because they want to shine and they want the shiny person next to them. They also want someone with who might potentially have status and resources. So this could be someone who maybe they perceive to be wealthy, or that they have a good group of friends and family that they have around them, a cool job, or a lot of skills. Again, it's like they want the best parts of you. They'll, of course, look for a kind person because they know that a kind person is going to be willing to offer them support and praise and make them feel good. And so they're going to gravitate right toward the person who is friendly, compassionate, and kind. They will also look for someone who's affectionate, someone who is willing to give their love unconditionally, and even someone who's physically affectionate, who's going to be touching them and supporting them in that capacity, and even in terms of sex. But the interesting thing to know about narcissistic people is they don't really use sex for the sake of pleasure. They're typically utilizing sex as a means of power and control. And frequently you may not understand this until you're outside of the relationship, but a lot of times they wield that sexual energy more as a control piece than really as a pleasure piece that, the typical healthy connection will be seeing it as. And then finally, in terms of traits, they want someone who is malleable. They want to be able to control you. They want someone who will apologize. They want someone who will bend over backwards for them to try to improve the relationship. They want someone who's willing to do the work on themselves, even though they're not looking to work on their own nature. They want someone else who is working on themselves because they know that person's always looking to do better and be better, and they can harness that for their own good. So what is really sick about the narcissistic manipulation is that they pursue you for your very best traits. And then, because they know they don't deserve you, they systematically attack those very traits. They systematically go after your self-esteem so that you can no longer see your worth. They tell you you're not lovable. They tell you you're not attractive. They withhold affection. And so it becomes so confusing and so depleting to your energy field that you don't even know what's happening. You feel like you're losing sometimes your sense of self and really all loss of control in your world. And it can be very, very scary. So what is the remedy to being a narcissist magnet? The remedy, it seems simple, but of course, like everything, it's not. The remedy is knowing your worth, knowing you are lovable at your core, period. And not being concerned with what you think, with what they think. You need to be able to take back your power, because when you own your power and your truth, they can't manipulate you anymore. So this isn't easy to achieve solely on your own. We've actually talked about this before in What I Got Wrong About Self-Love. I will link to that below. Self-love requires at least the support of one other person who will validate you and remind you of your worth. And so this could be a friend, a family member, a coach. I've even talked about it being my cats. When you have positive, loving energy sort of affirming to you that you are a loving soul, that makes it a lot easier to see your worth. So please try to surround yourself with people who have that capacity, who do see your worth, because they can help to pull you out and keep you out of narcissistic relationships. None of us can do this on our own. Like I said, the energetic piece of it can be really challenging. So it's helpful to find another positive, loving soul to help bolster you and pull you out. So I just dumped a bunch of information on you. And so it's important to remind you what we talked about in the last video, that knowledge is not enough to protect yourself. If you have all these beautiful traits we just discussed, I don't want you to change them. I just want you to be more aware. And as soon as you detect a feeling of negativity or draining in your body, that alerts to you that something might be off, you must honor that feeling. Okay? And remember that you can always leave any situation. You get to choose yourself and your own well-being first, always. So if you want any additional support on these sort of broad topics, I'm going to link to some of the other previous videos that we've covered that I think can be helpful. You can always reach out to me at happyhealthyher.com. I'm happy to help you. Again, links will be provided below to all of that. And I really hope this was helpful. As always, I wish you happiness and good health, and thanks for being with me.